Well, good morning, friends. My name is Gary McSweeney. I'm a teacher at Living Wisdom School, and it's a great privilege to share Yogananda's teachings with all of you this morning. And it's also a great blessing because as soon as we see our names on that list of ministers that are going to give Sunday service, we start to think about the topic. I know I do. And I start to gather stories, and I start to pay a little bit more attention to my sadhana, and I start to be a little bit more serious about the path. So the day before, I block out everything now, and I give it entirely to God and to the preparation. And I always wonder, because I always enjoy the process, I read Swami's books, I read Master's books, I meditate more. Why don't I do this more often? And I always think, well, I don't have to do this when I'm giving service. I could just do it any Saturday. But the months and the years go by, and I've never once done it when I wasn't scheduled to give service. I thought it might be a good exercise for any of you who would be interested in taking me up on it if you look at next week's topic and just pretend this week you're giving next week's talk. Shanti's actually giving it, but you could look up in the book, find out the topic, and delve into it. And it's a treat. It's a great blessing. So this morning, as I'm standing backstage in the minister's room, I hear the song by Tandava, and several of the light bearers commented, boy, who's chanting today? It's really powerful. And I wanted to tell a story about the first time I heard that song. Dear God, is that the name of it? Dear God. So we did a fundraiser in San Francisco. It was World Brotherhood Day. It was Ananda's early attempts at fundraising. And everyone from the village and Sacramento and all the different colonies, centers, whatever we had at that time, came to San Francisco. We rented a hall on Van Ness, and Swami gave a talk, and everyone was supposed to donate a day's wages to this event, World Brotherhood Day. And a little side story, after we had rented it, we were looking at the photos in the archives of the place, and we realized that Yogananda had spoken there once, many, many years ago on one of his tours. So that added a special blessing to it. So we go to, after the event, Swami's speech, we go to Gaylord's Indian Restaurant over in North Beach, or Fisherman's Wharf area. And we have this big, beautiful, delicious Indian meal, and just, we're all stuffed. And I think it's because of the spices. I drink a lot of water, and I really can barely move. And Swami stands up, and I wasn't sitting at his table. I was over on the side. But just for whatever reason, he said, I have a song that I've written. I'd like to share it with you. And he came over, and he stood, and it just happened to be right near where I was sitting. And he sang that song a cappella to this restaurant. And Swami was a man of tremendous energy. And just when he put his will into something, he gave it 110%. And I was just blown away. He just sat there singing the song, and his chest is out, and he just sings this song out after this huge meal. And then he just says thank you, and he sits down. And I was just like, wow, what an amazing force. So I want to share some stories, and I'm hoping that the thread of all these stories is first things first. So the question is, what is first? Because for many people, it's not God. It's, job, relationships, security, maybe some retirement, health, all good things. No one could argue with any of them. But today's teaching and Yogananda's teaching is very clear. The purpose that we are here for is to find God. Yogananda called this world a mud puddle. And he said, you can make it as nice as you want. And we do a pretty good job around here. The schools are nice. The climate is nice. There's money. There's wealth. There's wonderful art. There's a lot of wonderful things in the Bay Area. But he said, no matter how you do it, it's never, ever, ever going to bring you the happiness that we're all looking for. So that's today's reading. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. So I'll start with a story about my son's birth. My son's 27 now. He's a grown man. But I was at Kaiser Hospital in San Francisco, and basically, I won't tell the whole story, but this was after months of classes and learning about births and finding out that we were going to have this child and finding out he was going to be a boy. And I go to Kaiser, he's born, and basically at one point, the nurses politely but firmly told me, just go away. We're going to work with the mother now and make sure the baby's okay. So I said, fine. So I go outside, and I'm in this glass-enclosed stairwell on Geary Boulevard in San Francisco, Kaiser Hospital. And I'm standing there, and the full weight of what has just happened now, it's all this talk about the birth, and now the baby's here, and now it really starts. I mean, this is the big job. And I must say, I was intimidated, afraid, or unsure of my abilities as a father. I still felt like I was a kid. And how can you be a father when you're a kid? So I'm standing there, and I look out over the view, and I see Mount Tamalpais. And I think, okay, I can bring Brian to Point Reyes. We have a cabin up there. I can bring him backpacking. I can, explore nature with him. I love nature, go on hikes with him. That's good. And then my view comes over, and I could actually see where I grew up, my apartment house where the McSweeneys grew up, my brothers and I. It's right in a view with Mount Tam, and I think, well, we'll create a home for this young soul. We'll nurture him. That's good. Then I look towards downtown, and that's where I went to grammar school, Notre Dame de Victoire, and I think, okay, education, that's really big in my family. We'll educate this boy. We'll send him to a good school. We'll find a good school. We'll send him to it. Then I went a little bit further, and you can see where the family steel yard was in the Bayview district. And I thought, okay, he'll have a job. He'll have to get employment at some point. I'm a steel contractor. Maybe he'll be an iron worker. I basically hope he doesn't become an iron worker, but he might want to go in that path. Maybe he could do something better. And then I see Candlestick Park, and I think, okay, I have to raise this boy as a Giants fan and as a Niner fan in order to continue the family traditions. And I did all these things. He was 5 weeks old, and I brought him to his first doubleheader. It was against the St. Louis Cardinals. We were in a pennant race that year, 1987. And ironically, we defeated them this week. So we got our vengeance because they beat us that time. And we had a Christmas photo, and he's in a 49er uniform. And we had birthdays, and it was all Giant regalia. It's just part of who the McSweeneys are. And he's still a Giants fan, which is good. He called me right after they won this week. But on a more serious note, I thought, okay, let's do all these things for him, because those are all the things I did. And I was absolutely miserable at one point in my life. I had all those things. I had a wonderful family. I had Point Reyes. I had a lot of wonderful things, but there was just something that was just really eating away at me. I was not a happy camper. And it wasn't until I met Swami Kriyananda and got on the path. But before that, I had that moment there thinking about Brian, and I thought, I can give him all these other things. And we did it. We did Disneyland, orthodontist, dentist. We did what parents do. We raised him the way you're supposed to raise a child. But in that moment, I said, God, this child is yours. Master, this boy is yours. This job is so far beyond my capabilities. And I really mean that. So take me up on it, please. And I could make little jokes about how he never helped with diapers and all that, but we did our part. But there was this thread through his life, and I consciously, deliberately, and continually would meditate and pray for this young soul. Because what is really meaningful in life? Is it high-paying jobs? Is it all those other things? No. But the tricky part is we still have to do all those things. It's not like Swami set an example of, okay, I'm going to lead a spiritual life. I'm going to go to a little cabin in the woods, and I might come out twice a year and give a talk and then go back. And you should all do the same. It wasn't that way at all. Swami set an example of intense activity. And he took photographs, and he wrote music, and he wrote books, and he traveled, and he started communities, and he counseled couples, and he married people, and he did baby blessings, and he was totally engaged in the whole process. But I saw as my son went through school, he was blessed to go to this school, the Living Wisdom School. And if you want to talk about starting first things first, one of the things we do with the children is we teach them to breathe, because emotional states are tied to the breath, and children are emotional beings. They get upset. This girl went down recently on the playground, and she scraped her knee, and she was really crying. She had really kind of lost control of her emotions. And I just said to her, breathe. And that is all I had to say. And she just sat up straight, and she started going, and by about the third one, this whole group of children and myself, we were just like totally centered and just watching this girl like, wow, it's so basic. It's so basic, it's so simple, and it's so important. When I think of Swami Kriyananda and his example, I think of a couple of stories. I wasn't part of Ananda at this time, but this was really impressive to me. In the late 70s, a fire swept through Ananda. Asha's talked about it. And it was scorched earth. Of the 22 homes that existed, 21 burned to the ground. It was a complete and total loss. No fire insurance. And to put it in perspective, this had taken years of just hard work by everyone in the community to get these homes built, to get the community up and going. Beautiful forest, but just a lot of hard work was wiped out in an afternoon. Swami was in Hawaii at the time, resting, I believe, after finishing the path, but I'm not sure of that. He gets word of it, he comes back. And they find out in the investigation that the fire was caused by a faulty spark arrestor on a county piece of equipment. And as Swami would tell the story, the neighbors lit up, meaning we're going to get reimbursed. We're going to sue the county. It was their fault. Counties have deep pockets, and they will get the money. We will get millions. We can rebuild Ananda. This will be great. Swami has a different spin on it, and he says, well, this is our bad karma. Why would we take out our bad karma on our neighbors? That doesn't make any sense. So he writes to the county, and he says, you guys might be expecting it, but we're not going to sue you. We're never going to sue you on this one. We're just going to deal with it ourselves. Another little wrinkle of the story is it was more than some people could handle, and they decided to leave Ananda. And it must have been a very difficult decision. And money and donations came in. Mount Madonna, the Red Cross, they came with food and diapers and clothing because it was just, people lost everything. And there was even some money, some cash. Swami said, as a community, we should give the cash to the people who are leaving. And someone said, why would we do that? He said, well, because they're going to need it more than us. We still have each other. We still have the support system that's going to get us through this. There's a great photo of Asha the day after the fire, just cleaning the scarred earth. She has a big brush in her hand, and she's throwing it, and she's got this huge, beatific smile on her face. Because those who stayed, they weren't there for the beautiful forest. They weren't there to get away from the city life. They were there for Swami and for God. And that one-pointed devotion is what got them through it. So, let's see, I'm going through my outline now. I may have to even refer to my notes. I apologize. We had parent conferences Thursday and Friday, and they were basically 19 hours of conversation. And I came out pretty mush-brained. And then yesterday was the day to kind of recoup, but I didn't quite get all the way back. Yes, Swami told many stories, and I've seen a few of these in my own life, of when you do put it towards God. For instance, tithing. First of every month, first check some of us write is to Ananda, or to, tithing to give back to God. And over the years, I've had a mixed relationship with tithing, because when I have a plenty, I'm happy to share. But when I was paying for my son through college, it was the first time in my life where I didn't have plenty. And it was still always interesting. I would write checks. Now I have it automatically taken away out of my credit card, so I get frequent flyer miles, but that's a side point. But when you write that check, good times and bad times, it's really interesting. And the second part of today's reading is, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added to you. And that's always a question, like, really? He's going to take care of me? I mean, like, if I give it all away, I'm still going to be taken care of? Really? I've seen, in the most subtle ways and in the most miraculous ways, I'll write those checks. When I really need money, I have gotten it from some really bizarre sources. I get a standard paycheck at the school. I can work 80 hours a week. I don't get overtime. It's not one of those jobs. I have received money from the most unexpected tax returns. Oh, you made a mistake 2 years ago in your tax return and we just caught it. Here's a check. It's like, what? You know, Divine Mother, she's so subtle. She reads our heart. So if we're doing it for like, I'll give 100 now as long as I get 1,000 back next month. She doesn't play that game. But if you do it sincerely, and Swami would talk about this all the time, during Ananda's lawsuits, we were faced for 12 years at one point with a very horrific lawsuit. These people spent $50 million, that's $50 million, in deposition lawyers to attack Ananda. It was at least as challenging for the community as the fire. It caused many people to doubt and to wonder. And when you see Swami navigate something like that for 12 years and adhere to Dharma, that was my point. Ananda is premised on two basic principles. The first one is where there is Dharma, there is victory. And the second one is people are more important than things. And that fire story tells you that Swami was an adherent of Dharma. He felt it was the Dharmic thing to do, to not sue the county and to give the money away to those who were leaving. And during the lawsuit, in many, 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 many ways, when it would have been so easy to just fudge a little bit and to say, well, you know, in the practical world, we have to do this. He just never did. And I've seen over the years how Ananda does, to the best of our ability, try to adhere to Dharma. If, and as much as we can, we start to have faith in this divine process. We start to trust it, as Swami did. Swami had a car once, and he got into a wreck on the way to Tahoe, and the car was totaled. And he knew he was leaving for India, and he had enough money to go to India, but he also knew that when he came back, the first thing he would need is a car. So he prayed to Divine Mother. He goes, I want to still go to India, but on a practical level, I need a car. I need a car in order to go to all the classes I'm teaching in yoga. So he says, if you still want me to go to India, you're going to have to provide the money. He put it to her like that. So he buys the car, $1,000. The amounts are small in those days. It dates Ananda, but that's what we were dealing with. That was on a Friday, he bought the car. Had no money to go to India. He receives an envelope the following Monday from someone he did not know for the exact amount, saying, spend this as Divine Mother would like for you to. Again, when the coincidences are this much, you do have to start to see that, you know, there's a divine hand in all this. Swami once went to Carmel to celebrate another thing. He used to like to, after a big push of energy, he used to like to go out and celebrate with Divine Mother. So he went to Carmel. He had just barely enough money to get by. He goes to this hotel. He checks in for the weekend. He says, I'd like to pay you now. He didn't want to tell the person that he was afraid he would spend money on food or something and not have enough to pay for his hotel room. So the person said, no, it's okay. And Swami said, I really think I should pay you now. He said, no, you're not going to pay at all. I'm going to put you down as a travel agent. He said it's the one and only time it's ever happened to him. But he decided to travel with Divine Mother. Now, these battles are always hard fought. They're always like, whatever our little chink in our armor is, that's where Divine Mother's going to get us. So it's just little bit by little bit, or maybe you take a big leap. People at Ananda over the years have certainly taken a big leap. But my thought today is that as much as we are able to start trusting in the divine, and as much as we're able to put ourselves out there, and the pocketbook is always a big one for me, but it's also energy, and also by putting God first, prioritizing God in our lives is the key. It's sadhana. When we go into meditation, and I know people struggle with meditation, that's not even slightly unusual, but to whatever extent we can try to meditate and to interiorize our mind, whatever extent we can serve the work or to serve others, whatever we can do towards the divine, over time you'll see that that's what really brings dividends, so to speak. It's what keeps life meaningful. And God knows this world has so many ways of pulling us out into other things. It's difficult to pick up a newspaper now and not feel like, oh my God, what is going on in this world? Bill this morning came back and I said, how you doing? He said, I'm doing great. I said, wow, such enthusiasm. He said, I went to a wake last night. So I'm Irish. I thought he went to a wake, like someone had died, and I didn't quite get why he was so happy. He went to the movie Awake, the movie about Yogananda, which could touch millions. It could bring another wave of people, because even though Yogananda is so well known amongst us, there are still so many people that have never even heard him. And one of the things Yogananda predicted, that this spirit of self-realization and world brotherhood colonies would bring a new age of peace and of harmony to this world. And looking at the newspapers, it seems like, I'm ready for it. And I just think it would be wonderful, just little by little, the small band of people that we are here today, to get the faith to realize that whatever you put in the direction of the divine will bring back many, many more blessings. Thank you.